Hello, my name is Irina, and I am a guest expert in international law. And today I will tell you about the changes in legislation that have come into force since June 2026. Surely many of you have faced a situation where the law in the United Arab Emirates changed, and you were the last to know. Federal level, emirate laws, free zones, keeping track of all this manually is simply impossible. We have gathered everything in one place and taught artificial intelligence to answer questions with links to specific articles, so you don't have to guess and know exactly what is currently in effect. This is our monthly digest of changes in the legislation of the United Arab Emirates. Today is June 2026. What has been updated, what to pay attention to, and who might be affected in practice? June turned out to be not so much a month of loud reforms as a month of practical compliance. The most important changes in taxes and digital reporting, updated clarifications on e-invoicing, new versions of the Federal Tax Authority guides, international exchange of information on crypto assets, and updated OECD materials on top-up tax for multinational groups. Separately, the Cabinet of Ministers' decision on the law on financial reorganization and bankruptcy should be noted. This is a targeted special mechanism for procedures related to the consequences of geopolitical tension in the region. And in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, the regulation of law enforcement and autonomous transport continues. Cameras for recording violations, parking rules, and testing of unmanned maritime vessels. Let's start with e-invoicing. The Ministry of Finance has published an updated version of the UAE Electronic Invoicing Guidelines, version 1.1, dated June 1st, 2026. The main update is more practical clarifications on data storage. A person subject to the e-invoicing system must store electronic invoices, electronic credit notes, and related data for the periods established by the legislation on tax procedures. It is important that the data be stored so that it can be provided to the Federal Tax Authority upon request. This means integrity, security, retrievability, and a readable format. The role of accredited service providers has been separately clarified. They must store technical logs for each operation, unique identifiers, transmission statuses, and routing information. But these technical logs do not replace the commercial and tax documents that the business itself must store. If a company delegates data storage to a service provider under a contract, the legal obligation still remains with the company itself. An important part of the updated clarifications is advances and retentions under contracts. If a company receives an advance payment, a tax invoice must be issued on the date the advance is received. When the final invoice is issued later, it should reflect only the remaining amount, not the full cost of the supply. The logic is simple. The tax invoice for the advance has already been issued, so the full amount cannot be duplicated. The clarifications also explain how to reflect a reference to the original invoice and the prepayment amount in a subsequent invoice. The approach to contract retentions is more flexible. Companies can continue using existing commercial and accounting practices provided they meet VAT and e-invoicing requirements. For instance, an e-invoice can be issued for the amount payable to the supplier after deduction, while a separate e-invoice for the retained amount can be issued later when the buyer's obligation to pay it arises. In June, the Federal Tax Authority released and updated several practical tax guides at once. The first one is taxation of family foundations. It focuses on the taxation of family foundations under the corporate tax law. The guide explains which structures can be considered a family foundation when such a structure can be tax transparent and treated as an unincorporated partnership, and the implications for the family foundation itself and its beneficiaries. The June version updates specific sections including legislative references, trust structures, similar entities, multi-tier structures, asset transfers to a family foundation, and family offices. The second document is VAT refund for UAE nationals building new residences. It explains the VAT refund procedure for UAE nationals building new residential homes, who can apply, which expenses qualify for a refund, the required timelines and documents, and how to apply via Emara tax or Maskan. The June update concerns Annex 1, the list of expenses for which VAT may or may not be refunded. It relates to the Federal Tax Authority's decision number 5 of 2026 regarding the addition of expenses eligible for refund. And the third document is the new Education Sector Guide on VAT in the education sector. This is the first version of the guide published in June 2026. The document explains how to apply VAT to educational services and related goods and services. The main logic is as follows. Educational services in the UAE may be zero-rated, but only if certain conditions are met. The service must be provided by a qualifying educational institution, and the instruction must follow a recognized curriculum. The zero rate is applied strictly and only if all conditions are satisfied. The guide specifically addresses practical situations: registration fees, events, educational trips, graduation ceremonies, support for students with special educational needs, housing for students and staff, distance learning, medical services at educational institutions, school buses, grants, scholarships, research services, and input VAT recovery. The next topic is crypto assets and international tax transparency. Federal Decree number 60 of 2026 ratifies the Multilateral Competent Authority Agreement on the automatic exchange of information under the Crypto Asset Reporting Framework, or CARF. It's important not to confuse them. This isn't a new licensing regime for crypto businesses in the UAE. It's specifically tax reporting and a mechanism for automatic information exchange. CARF was developed to combat tax evasion in the field of crypto assets. The logic is this: crypto asset service providers subject to reporting must collect and transmit certain information, perform user verification, and the competent authorities of jurisdictions will be able to exchange this information automatically. In June, the applicable OECD commentary and administrative guidance for top-up tax purposes were also updated. Ministerial Decision number 96 of 2026 was adopted for the purposes of Cabinet Decision number 142 of 2024 on the introduction of a top-up tax for multinational enterprises. The new decision replaces Ministerial Decision number 88 of 2025. The main changes are an updated list of OECD documents used for top-up tax purposes. 3 documents are now approved: the 2026 OECD Consolidated Commentary on Global Anti-Base Erosion Rules, OECD Administrative Guidance on Global Minimum Tax Rules, and the OECD Global Minimum Tax Information Return for January 2025. The decision applies to financial years beginning on or after January 1st, 2025, and is effective from the date of issuance, June 22nd, 2026. For a multinational group, this means that the calculation and analysis of top-up tax in the UAE must be checked against the already updated OECD materials rather than the previous list. Separately, Cabinet Decision number 94 of 2026 under the Financial Restructuring and Bankruptcy Law should be highlighted. The decision applies the provisions of Part 5 or Chapter 5 of the Financial Restructuring and Bankruptcy Law to preventive settlement, restructuring, and bankruptcy proceedings if such proceedings arose from acts of aggression by a geopolitical neighbor against the UAE. The regime is in effect from February 28, 2026 until the date the Cabinet of Ministers adopts a separate decision upon the proposal of the Minister of Justice. This needs to be phrased carefully. It's not a general bankruptcy reform, nor is it a change to all bankruptcy cases. It's a special crisis response mechanism for specific categories of consequences. In Dubai, 2 urban topics can be combined into one slide for June: enforcement cameras and parking. Dubai Executive Council Decision number 13 of 2026 regulates the use of cameras to document the duties of officials when identifying violations and conducting enforcement procedures. The rules apply to persons with judicial police powers and officials involved in enforcement procedures, but not to regular police officers of general status. The document is important not just because of the cameras themselves, but also because of data management. Recordings must be stored in a secure, encrypted database. Access to them must be restricted to authorized personnel, and when working with recordings, confidentiality, personal data, trade secrets, and other protected information must be taken into account. The second topic is Dubai Administrative Decision number 363 of 2026 regarding peak hours in premium parking zones, events, and adjacent public parking lots. For regular days from Monday to Saturday, peak hours are defined as 8 to 10 in the morning and 4 to 8 in the evening. For Ramadan, it is from 8 to 10 and from 1 to 5. Separately listed are events during which parking fees apply at adjacent parking lots, including Gulfood, Gitex, Beauty World Middle East, Gulfood Manufacturing, the Big Five, and others. In Abu Dhabi waters, it is now possible to test unmanned marine vessels, but only according to approved rules. This is not about launching commercial operations, but specifically about regulating testing. The guide covers testing permits and the application procedure, test zones, requirements for conducting tests, data recording and cybersecurity, monitoring and inspections, post-test reporting, liability, and fines. This fits into the UAE's general policy on autonomous transport. First, controlled testing in restricted zones with strict requirements for data and cybersecurity, reporting and control, and only then scaling up. June 2026 is not a month of one big reform, but a month of practical adjustments. If you want to understand any of these documents, all texts are available in realLaw AI. Subscribe so you don't miss the next monthly digest. All the best and have a good day.